Well, hello and welcome to this English lesson about when things go wrong, part 2. So I thought of this lesson because they built a new concert venue in Toronto. It's called the Rogers Stadium, I think. And they had their first concert there. And it went okay, but when the concert was over, it took over 2 hours for people to leave the venue. They didn't design it very well. So it was kind of a debacle. It was kind of a screw up on someone's part. Someone certainly botched the plans for that stadium. And as I thought of those words, I thought I should do an English lesson on this. So I started making it, and then I realized that I've already done one, but I was using all different words. So if you do want to watch part 1, there is a link in the description below to part 1, but welcome to this English lesson about when things go wrong. Sometimes in life, everything goes really good, but sometimes things go wrong. And in this English lesson, I'll teach you about 30 words that you can use to describe those situations. So once again, welcome to this English lesson about when things go wrong, part 2. Chaos. Chaos refers to complete confusion and lack of control. We use this word quite a bit. Like if I leave my classroom, depending on what students I have, if I step into the hallway to talk to another teacher, when I return, it might be chaos in my classroom. If you let children try to bake by themselves without supervision, when you return to the kitchen, there might be chaos, complete confusion and lack of control. We often use chaos to refer to a situation where children especially are behaving a little bit badly, right? When I go to a family reunion on Jen's side, there are so many little kids around, it can be chaos. They throw things and they run around and they're loud. I like little kids, but they can actually cause chaos in certain situations. So chaos, complete confusion, and lack of control. You can also use this to talk about traffic. Like, oh, it was just chaos on the highway on the way to work this morning. It was a mess. It was not organized. There was lots of confusion. Failure. So this is one that you probably are aware of, not achieving what was planned. As you can see, this guy fell down as he was finishing the race. Although if I look in the distance, maybe I chose a bad picture. Failure, not achieving what was planned. Let's pretend that this guy planned to finish the race, but as he was approaching the finish line, he fell down and was unable to finish it. That would be a failure. It's not a nice word, but a failure would be when you try to achieve something and it doesn't end up happening. That is how we would talk about something that is a failure. A disaster, a complete failure or terrible event. So there are two ways we use this word. There are actual disasters in the world, like flooding or natural disasters, maybe a tsunami. Those are natural disasters. But we also use the word to refer to anything that doesn't go well. If Jen went to market and if it rained and she didn't sell any flowers, she might come home and say it was a disaster. It rained, the market was open for 5 hours and it rained for 5 hours. No customers bought flowers. She would then say it was a disaster. So you can use it to refer to like a plane crash or a serious disaster, but we also use it to describe smaller situations where things don't go well. If Jen made 50 bouquets and went to market and only sold one, that would be a disaster. A screw up. So be careful with this one. It is informal. But a screw up is any kind of mistake that someone makes, a careless mistake. And then I put in brackets that this is informal. So what would a screw up be? A screw up would be, let's say you invite someone over for supper and you ask them what they like to eat and they say they don't eat meat. And then you cook chicken for the meal. That would be a screw up. The people would arrive and they would say, oh, we're vegetarian. We don't eat meat. And you would say, oh, I'm sorry, that was my bad. That's a very informal way to take ownership, but that would be a screw up. So a careless mistake. There's a lot of screw ups in life. I don't want to use the market as an example again, but sometimes the vendors enter in the wrong order, and then it's a bit of a screw up. It's a bit of a careless mistake. Mess. So mess is a very universal word, a situation that is badly organized. And it kind of has two meanings. Like on the floor here, you can see that there is a mess. So a mess is whenever anything just isn't organized, okay? But you can also say something's a mess when it's not planned well. So let's say you planned a surprise party and you invited everyone to come to your apartment and you didn't tell them what time to come. That would be a mess. People would arrive at all different times and it just wouldn't work very well. So when something is a mess, it's a situation that is badly organized or an actual mess. Like this is an actual mess on the floor here. A flop, something that completely fails. So these two guys look really sad in the picture. I imagine that one of them decided to have a birthday party and no one came. And I feel bad, but it's something that completely failed. So this birthday party is a flop. Another example would be if you're planning any kind of event and you're hoping that 100 people come and only 3 people come, you would say it's a flop. That was just a flop. That didn't work out very well. Not as many people came. You can also have this when you're cooking. Like if you try a new recipe and when you taste it, it doesn't taste very good because you didn't follow the recipe very well, you would say it's a flop. Oh, this cake was a flop. This recipe, this dish that I made is a flop. It does not look the way it's supposed to look, and it does not taste the way it's supposed to look. It is a flop. A collapse is a sudden failure. So there could be a collapse in the stock market. There could be a collapse in the confidence people have in a political leader. There can be a physical collapse where like a bridge falls down. All of these would be things not going well. But we often use this word to talk about the stock market. So if you own stocks and the market goes down, you could say the market is collapsing. The market has collapsed. Things are not going well. A malfunction. So a malfunction is a failure to work properly. And we most often use this word to talk about machines. So maybe your car has a malfunction. Maybe your computer has a malfunction. Maybe the photocopier at work isn't working because there is a malfunction. It is a failure to work properly. So this computer just says error, try again. Click here for more information. That's a pretty vague error, but malfunction would be when a machine, like a car or a computer, anything like that, when it's not working properly, you could say it is a malfunction. We often just use the English word broken, like my computer has a malfunction, my computer is broken. A setback, a problem that delays progress, and usually temporarily. So a setback doesn't last a long time. If you were driving somewhere and all of a sudden you realized that you had a flat tire, this is just a setback, a problem that delays your progress to getting to where you need to go. But it's not the end of the world, we would say in English. It's really a minor setback. You would just need to put air in the tire or change the tire and put on your spare tire. That's what you would need to do. So it would be a setback, a minor setback. Blunder, a serious or embarrassing mistake. So a blunder would be something like this. If I was eating at work and I got my food and then I tripped and fell and I spilled my food on the ground, that would be a blunder. Sometimes leaders make a blunder. They'll say something that they weren't supposed to say when the journalists are interviewing them. They'll make a blunder. Or you could do something as simple as a recent president trying to get on the plane and then tripping would be a blunder. So yes, when you speak English, because you are learning English, you probably make mistakes, and you could call those mistakes blunders. Like, oh, whenever I speak, I make a lot of blunders, serious or embarrassing mistakes. But don't be embarrassed. keep speaking English and keep practicing. Mistake. So a mistake, this is the simple term, right? Doing something wrong or incorrect. Probably the most common thing would be in school. You will make a mistake on a quiz or on a test. Maybe you're solving math problems. 4 plus 2 is not 8. 2 times 3 is not 5. And 7 squared is not 14. In fact, the correct answers would be 6. 2 times 3 is 6. 7 squared would be 49. I think I got that right. 7 times 7. So did I do that right? Yes, I think I did that right. This is not a math lesson, but a mistake, this is the general term. If you were to use one term the most from this lesson, it would be the term mistake. Sometimes I make a mistake when I'm speaking English. Sometimes someone makes a mistake at work. A misstep. So this is a little more formal. We don't use this word a lot, but a misstep is simply a mistake. It's a wrong move or action, a wrong move or action. So this button says don't touch. It would be a misstep if someone was to touch it. So it's very similar to a mistake. In fact, I think it's like used interchangeably sometimes. Like, oh, I didn't make a mistake. It was just a misstep. Like you're trying to make it sound a little lighter. An error, very similar to a mistake. In fact, the definition says a mistake usually in writing or math. If you look at this piece of writing, it says many flowers and the A is crossed out and turned to an O because that is an error. Flowers is spelled Flowers, not Flawers. I wanted to read the rest of this because I actually think there's a mistake right here too, because beady isn't a word. It should be beauty, or the T should be a D if it's actually beady. Like if I have beady eyes, those are beady eyes, by the way. Did that scare you? Beady eyes are like big eyes that stare at you quite intently. I'm just watching the replay just to see what my beady eyes look like. I'm just waiting to see it. Hopefully I didn't scare any of you. Yep, those are big beady eyes. Okay, sorry, I'm entertaining myself instead of teaching you. To backfire. So to backfire is when something has the opposite effect of what was intended. There are many examples in history of things that backfire. So for instance, in the US, they decided to ban drinking alcoholic beverages, and it was called prohibition, but it kind of backfired because criminals started to make and sell alcohol, and all of a sudden criminals had a lot more money. I think there's an example too of countries saying you can only drive your car if the license plate starts with an odd number every other day, but this just resulted in people buying more cars. So they would have a car for every day of the week. This happened in a couple of countries. But when something backfires, the verb to backfire means when something has the opposite effect on what was intended. So here's a simpler example. Let's say my kids are very hyper and misbehaving, and I want them to calm down. And I say, I'll buy you candy if you can be quieter. Let's say we're driving in the car and they're really loud when they were little. If I give them candy, they'll have more sugar in them, and then they'll be even louder and crazier. So that would backfire on me. It would definitely backfire. Train wreck. So this is a little bit of an informal phrase, a chaotic or disastrous situation. When you do something, if it doesn't go well, you can describe it as a train wreck. So I would say this year at school. No, I shouldn't say this year, should I? There are times where students will do a presentation and it will be a train wreck. Maybe it's supposed to be 20 slides long and it's only 2 slides long. Maybe they did the wrong topic. Maybe they just don't do a very good job presenting it. You could say, oh, like you wouldn't say it to them because it's informal and it's a bit insulting, but you could say, wow, that was a train wreck. The very first time I had a French conversation online many years ago, it was a train wreck. Like I did a very, very bad job. It was not good. So again, similar to screw up, this is kind of an informal term, but a train wreck is a chaotic or disastrous situation. You can see the people in the photo are all like, what? Like, I don't know what they're seeing, but it's obviously not good and probably a train wreck. Omission, a person or thing that has been left out or excluded. And then I've given you a list of the best English teachers on YouTube. So we have Lucy, Tiffany, Luke does a podcast, Rachel, Vanessa, Greg. But you'll notice there's a few omissions. You probably have a favorite YouTube English teacher. Maybe it's me, but I'm not going to put myself on this list. And you might say, hey, there's an omission here. You forgot Brent from American English with this guy, or American English with Brent. I called him by his old name. Sorry, Brent. But you might say, hey, that list isn't complete. There are some omissions. There are some persons that have been left out or excluded. And this happens quite often in life. It can happen whenever someone makes a list. You might say to that person, hey, there's an omission here. You forgot someone. Like, why Lucy, Tiffany, Luke, Rachel, Vanessa, Greg? What about, and then I can't think of another. What about Mike? What about, I'm trying to think of the other English teachers on YouTube. I don't watch a lot of other English teachers on YouTube, but you might say there is an omission. Downfall. Whenever I think of the word downfall, which is the collapse or ruin of something or someone, I usually think of Rome. So Rome had a downfall. Okay, we sometimes say the fall of Rome, but at a certain point, Rome was no longer as big and as wonderful as it had been. There was a downfall. Sometimes a politician will have a downfall. They'll think of something or they'll find something in that politician's past, and then there will be a downfall. So it will ruin their career because it is so negative. A decline, a steady drop in success, quality, or popularity. So sometimes there's a decline in the stock market. Sometimes there's a decline in the number of people buying things, and then the economy also has a decline. Sometimes there's a decline in the amount of nice weather. Sometimes, so it's whenever something goes down, there is a decline. And usually, well, it doesn't always have to be bad. There can be, like, there's been a decline in crime. That would be a good thing. So maybe that isn't something going wrong. But often when we use the word decline, we're talking about something getting worse. Okay, that's not true. If there's a decline in crime, that's good. If there's a decline in pollution, that's good. This might be the one where it can go both ways. Let me think of a better one. There's a decline in the amount of people who want to be police officers. See, that would be a bad thing for a country. Disruption. So I was trying to think of the best picture for disruption, something that interrupts or causes problems. Sometimes a student in class can be a disruption. If you were trying to take a train from one city to another and there were cows on the train track and the train had to stop, that would be a disruption, something that interrupts or causes problems. I've never seen this before, but when I did a search for disruption, this was one of the first pictures, and I thought it was an excellent example. If you're waiting for a train and the train is late, there was probably a disruption somewhere earlier in the train's journey. Maybe cows on the track. Maybe the train broke down. Maybe the computers weren't working. Maybe there was a malfunction and that caused a disruption. So it's whenever something doesn't go the way it's supposed to go. Fiasco. This is a very common word in a lot of languages, and it means a total failure. So a fiasco is any time things go really badly. This is a picture of, I think, Black Friday. And this is a bit of a fiasco. Sometimes on Black Friday in the US, so many people try to buy the same thing that it causes fights. And it could even cause people to steal things or to get angry with each other or to get angry at the store manager. So a fiasco is they did not plan this well. They should have had a place for people to line up. They should have done it in an orderly fashion, but instead, it has turned into a fiasco, a total failure. Snag, a small problem that slows things down. If I was driving to my sister's house and I got to a place where it said road closed, that would be a snag. It doesn't stop me from getting to my sister's house, but it's a snag. it's going to take me a little while to find a different road to go down. Sometimes when you plan something at the last minute, there are some snags. Maybe you're planning to go on a trip and there's a little snag at the last minute because you didn't fill out the right paperwork. And so you have to do some extra stuff at the airport. Hopefully it's just a small snag, a small problem that slows things down. A hiccup. So a minor and temporary issue, but I should say we use the word hiccup in a funny way as well. So a hiccup is this. So a hiccup is like something you can't control, and sometimes you get the hiccups. But we use this word to describe a problem or when things don't go well as well, kind of in a funny way. Like if someone saw me wearing my sling, they would say, "Whoa, what happened?" And I would say, "Oh, just a little hiccup at work. I fell down in a baseball game." So obviously this wasn't minor, but we sometimes use it in a funny way. So it's just a small hiccup. A glitch, very similar to a malfunction. A glitch is a fault, usually with technology. Sometimes you'll see this when you go to a restaurant now, a fast food restaurant. All of the screens that have the food pricing on them usually work well, but sometimes there's a glitch and maybe the screen has a line down it, or maybe the one screen is blinking on and off. There is a glitch. Here you see there's an IT outage and it says, "Dear customer, this checkout is closed. IT outage due to a global IT outage. We are currently operating on a reduced amount of registers on the self-checkout. We apologize. And thank you for your patience." There we go. So I forgot about that. I usually say cash register, but you can just say register as well. But a glitch, a fault, usually with technology. An oversight, something missed or forgotten by mistake. So let's say I was going to a play. I was invited to a play and they gave me 2 tickets to sit in the balcony. And then when I get there, they say, "Oh, there's no other seats in the balcony. You have to sit on the main level." That might be an oversight. Someone failed to communicate that Bob the Canadian was supposed to get the VIP seating. So an oversight is when something missed or forgotten by mistake. A slip up, a careless or small mistake. So this is similar to a screw up, but it's less informal. So you could use this word whenever you want. But a slip up would be, let's say I was supposed to pay you $1,000 and I accidentally paid you $1,100. That would be a slip up. So a careless or small mistake where I accidentally gave you $100 more than I needed to. Sometimes you make a little slip up when you're doing things like your taxes. You don't want to, but sometimes it does happen. To botch, to do something badly or clumsily. So if you hired a plumber and the plumber came and fixed your pipes and afterwards there was a leak like this, we would say that the plumber botched that job. It was a botched job. When you botch something, it means you don't do it to the highest quality. You do something badly. I think another thing is sometimes people get plastic surgery or cosmetic surgery and the doctor will botch it and they'll end up with, they wanted their ears smaller and their ears are bigger afterward. I don't know anything about cosmetic surgery, but you often hear that, like, oh, they went in for a nose job and the doctor botched it and then it didn't work the way it was supposed to. Debacle, a sudden and often embarrassing failure. So I said at the beginning of the lesson, they built a new stadium in Toronto for concerts, but they didn't design it for people to be able to exit quickly. And it's a bit of a debacle. It took 2.5 hours for people to get out of the stadium. And I put this picture here for Brent. This is a reference to an election many years ago where in the state of Florida, the little things they used to vote, sometimes it didn't quite punch it out properly. And there was, I think they call it a hanging chad, but it was quite a debacle because they couldn't finalize the results of the election until they hand counted all of the little voting forms. To bungle, to do something clumsily or poorly. You'll notice that some of these are quite similar. If you put all of the cups in the dishwasher facing up, you've bungled it. You've done something clumsily or poorly, because they'll all be full of water when you go to open the dishwasher. Downturn, a negative change, especially in the economy or performance. So sometimes there's a downturn in the market. We had a word earlier, right? What was the last one? Collapse is another one where I had a graph. Decline is another one where there is a graph. But sometimes there is a downturn. The stock prices keep going up, and then all of a sudden there's a downturn and they start going down. So it's that change that we're referring to. And then a lost cause, something that can't be saved or fixed. This car is a bit of a lost cause. I don't think you could fix this car if you wanted to. Sometimes people are a lost cause. Maybe you have a friend or relative and they just can't keep a job and they never have money. You might say, oh, they're a bit of a lost cause. It's an insult. So be careful when you describe someone that way, but that is what we call a lost cause.